Hi, I'm Tim Ogden, president of the Bardet Biedl Syndrome Foundation. Bardet Biedl syndrome is a rare genetic disorder with highly variable symptoms. That means that the specific symptoms an individual with BBS has and how severe those symptoms are can be very different from person to person. The most common ways a person with BBS is affected include retinal degeneration leading to blindness, excessive hunger and often obesity, reduced kidney function, and polydactyly, which means having extra fingers or toes. There are a lot of other symptoms associated with BBS. Those include learning disabilities or other neurological symptoms, a reduced sense of smell, hormone irregularities, abnormal height in relation to parents, and orthopedic problems. Of course, the symptom that gets the most attention is vision loss. Vision loss leading to blindness is the most common feature of BBS. As far as we know, while other symptoms of BBS are highly variable, everyone with BBS does experience major vision loss. That vision loss happens at different rates, though. Some people have lost almost all their vision by the time they're 15. Others have been able to drive into their late 20s. But eventually, everyone with BBS does experience major vision loss. Given the unusual and seemingly unrelated set of symptoms, it's natural to wonder what causes BBS. How can one disease affect the eyes, kidneys, bones, hormones, and other parts of the body? Doctors and researchers were puzzled by the same question for many, many years, and it's why diagnosing people with BBS was always difficult. Only rarely did a doctor dealing with vision loss ask questions about kidney function or whether someone had extra digits or toes at birth, much less pull all of the pieces together. But back in 2000, researchers identified the first BBS gene, and that laid the groundwork for finally understanding what causes BBS. Today, 25 genes have been identified that cause BBS, and all of those genes have to do with cilia. Cilia are hair-like structures on the surface of each cell whose job is to allow the cell to communicate with other cells and receive information from the external environment. What all of the symptoms of BBS have in common is they are related to problems with sending and receiving messages. The retinal cells responsible for vision are sending more messages than any other cell in the body. Every time light hits the retina, a message is sent to the brain. It's millions and billions of messages, and that's why vision is affected more than any other system. People with BBS often feel effects in other senses too: smell, balance, temperature. Kidneys send lots of messages, and people with BBS often have impaired kidney function. Another important message in the body is about feeling hungry and feeling full. Most people with BBS never feel full, and some feel constant, significant hunger. When you think of BBS as a problem with messages being passed within the body, particularly systems that need to send a lot of messages, the variety of symptoms start to make more sense. Because BBS is caused by defects in cilia, it's known as a ciliopathy. BBS is not the only ciliopathy. There are other syndromes like Joubert syndrome, Alström syndrome, and McKusick-Kaufman syndrome, and other diseases that only affect one system, like polycystic kidney disease or retinitis pigmentosa. In fact, many people with BBS are wrongly diagnosed with one of these other ciliopathies before being diagnosed with BBS. Many of the symptoms of the syndromes and ciliopathies overlap. We don't really know yet why some genetic defects in cilia lead to one set of symptoms and others to some other set of symptoms. It's one of the key questions researchers are working on right now. If you want to learn more, check out our BBS genetics video with Dr. Erica Davis, one of the researchers doing that work. BBS is a rare disease. In fact, it's an extremely rare disease. Estimates vary because historically very few people were ever diagnosed with BBS, and we didn't know the genetic causes. But based on our current understanding in population genetics, estimates are that in North America and Europe, about 1 in 150,000 people have BBS. As with all genetic diseases, there are some communities where it's more common, such as in Newfoundland or among Bedouins in the Middle East, where it affects around 1 in 15,000 people. But even though it's relatively more common in those locations, it's still rare. The definition of rare disease is that roughly 1 in 2,000 people have it. For instance, cystic fibrosis is a rare disease that affects about 1 in 4,000 people. In other words, cystic fibrosis is rare, but it affects about 40 times more people than BBS. To put some specific numbers on it, there are an estimated 3,000 people in the United States and Canada with BBS, and about 1,200 people in Western Europe. But many of those people have probably not been properly diagnosed. There currently isn't a cure or treatment for BBS, but huge progress has been made in the last 20 years since the first discovery of one of the genes that causes BBS. Today, we know that there are more than 25 genes that can cause BBS, and what each of those genes do. But there's still a lot we don't understand, including why symptoms and severity are so variable. It's clear that which gene someone with BBS has matters in some symptoms, and doesn't matter at all in others. In fact, two people in the same family with BBS can have very different symptoms. Researchers are hard at work with BBS families around the world to better understand how BBS affects people, how to manage symptoms, how it progresses over time, and differences between genes. We're also making progress on treatment in a number of different areas. One company has developed a drug that is currently awaiting final FDA approval that has shown very positive effects in hunger and weight control for people with BBS, regardless of gene, in clinical trials. A major focus for therapeutic research is exploring gene therapy. Gene therapy is a process where a disease-causing gene is replaced so that the body can function more like it's supposed to. Several different research groups are testing gene therapy for major BBS genes in mice. You can learn more about current research on therapies and treatment for BBS in our BBS Research Update video. Huge progress is being made on diagnosing, understanding, and treating BBS. More people than ever are being correctly diagnosed and being diagnosed much younger because of the genetic testing we can now do. Starting physical, occupational, and vision therapy early, getting started early with healthy diets and exercise can make a big difference for people with BBS, so it's important that people get diagnosed properly and as soon as possible. If you haven't yet, connect with the BBS Foundation. Our aim is to improve the lives of all people affected by BBS. We can help you find information, find doctors and researchers familiar with BBS, and connect to other families affected by BBS. We have a great community of BBS families ready to help you and your family. If you're not connected to the Foundation, please reach out. What else can you do? The most important thing any family with BBS can do is to join CRIBS, the Clinical Registry Investigating BBS. This is a global registry of clinical information that doctors and researchers need to make progress toward treatment and therapy. In fact, the existence of CRIBS is a major reason why the company developing a treatment for hunger focused their efforts on BBS instead of other diseases. And finally, you can help join Foundation efforts to raise funds for BBS research. The Foundation has provided the funding for CRIBS, our most powerful tool for advancing research, and we funded important research on gene therapy and BBS. We'd like to do more, though. With a disease as rare as BBS, funding is always an issue, so we need your help.